Brings us now to the Federal Reserve, which has a tremendous amount of power over interest rates in the U.S. But tonight, the Fed is in hot water for a different reason after allegedly ignoring outreach from the U.S. Attorney's Office related to cost overruns from an ongoing renovation. The Fed Chair, Jerome Powell, is now facing a federal probe. Here with more, U.S. Attorney for D.C., our close friend, we miss her dearly, Jeanine Pirro. Always great to have you back, Judge. Why do I suspect the reporting on this is way off and there's a lot more clarity, context, and texture to the whole story?
Well, I appreciate that, Sean. And you know me as a prosecutor. I've been a judge. I've been a DA. I've been a politician, and I've been a media personality. But today, I'm the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia, and with that job comes a responsibility to investigate and prosecute violations of federal crime in D.C., along with D.C. code crime. And my request in this case with the Federal Reserve was a legal request. And the chairman of the Federal Reserve, Powell, chose not to give a legal response. Instead, he chose to politicize and publicize. I did not politicize or publicize any of this. I follow the federal rules. I investigate until I have evidence. And if and when I do, then I go forward with a public statement. Now, what are we talking about? We're talking about $1 billion in cost overruns. Talk about fiscal irresponsibility. Talk about bureaucratic bloat. We're not talking about $1 million, $10 million, $100 million. We're talking about $1 billion in cost overruns in D.C., and something that is purely in my lane as the United States Attorney to investigate, as well as lying before Congress. So both of these things are issues that I looked at, and on December 19th, we started the investigation in November. On December 19th, we sent a letter, an email, and we said, we'd like to talk to people at the Federal Reserve. Give us a call. No response for 10 days. December 29th. Please give us a call. We'd like to talk to you. We'd like to speak to you. No response for 10 days. We want to meet them the first week of January. No response. So then we did what any normal prosecutor would do, and we issued legal process. I'm not saying that. He's saying that. So does the Federal Reserve Chairman Powell respond to that? No. What he does is he issues a video. He claims that he's being threatened with a criminal indictment, threatened that the independence of the Fed is under attack, which couldn't be further from the truth. Now, normally what people do is they pick up the phone, they call you, they say, yeah, let's talk about it. But if they had responded, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. And he's using this language about the independence of the Federal Reserve as some kind of ability for them to ignore any kind of legal oversight or legal scrutiny, or that would require us not to investigate potential lying before Congress. That's not how we work. No one is above the law. And so what we've got now is a case that, you know, the chairman is he's objecting to, and I can't tell if the claims are out of control or whether they're true. You know, if there are cost overruns, is it the contract? Is it the subcontractors, the contractors? Is it normal? And lying to Congress. Did he know about it? Did he know about the numbers? Did he not know about it? I do an investigation, and I do it quietly until I get to the point where I can say something. But the chairman says, no, you're attacking the independence of the Federal Reserve. That's not what we're doing. We're doing our job. And I think the sad part about this is no one is above the law, nor should anyone think that they have the right to be above the law, Sean. And I'm curious to those who claim, oh, my gosh, this is a terrible thing, even in our own party. What do you suggest? Are there certain people that you cannot investigate? Are there certain people that we look the other way and throw complaints in the drawer? That's not the America that I grew up in, Sean.
Just to be clear, Judge, you gave them an opportunity to just talk to you and say, what's going on here? Why are these massive cost overruns? They didn't get back to you. That's what happened?
He didn't respond. Right. Instead, he comes out with this crazy video.
If you write me one time and I don't respond, I'm dead. So it would have been smart if they just responded and had a conversation with you.
I wouldn't be sitting here today, Sean.
Why did I know instinctively that there was context and texture to this that the media wasn't getting right? Judge, we appreciate it. Thanks for being with us. Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.